Attention, humans! You will listen to this podcast. Fail to comply, and you will be exterminated. Secure your TARDIS and prepare to join Super Geeks.
Hello and welcome to Super Geeks Reaction Who number 5, which this time is covering 2 episodes in one because we got a little bit behind. My name is George, I'm your host, and with me today is Carlos Pedraza. How you doing, Carlos?
Doing great to be here.
Awesome. And Son, how you doing, Son?
I'm doing okay. Having political arguments on the internet is always fun.
Yeah, it can be. So anyways, this time we're reviewing, like I said, 2 episodes in one, which is technically Doctor Who's series season 11 episodes. I believe, it's 5 and 6. The first one we're going to talk about is, I guess we'll just do them one at a time. The first one is called, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Tsuranga Conundrum, I think it's called. I think it was Tsuranga Conundrum, which was episode 5. And that one was the one with the spaceship, the medical spaceship, where we found the characters getting hit with a sonic mine in the very beginning of the episode. And then when they were going through some space junkyard, and then they woke up on a spaceship, a space medical ship, and all hell broke loose. Let me start with Carlos. Carlos, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Well, high level, I would say that I really liked it. I thought it was an innovative format. I like that. Have you noticed, by the way, that we have had really very little TARDIS time this season?
We have.
I mean, it's really, we've just seen the TARDIS get them places, they leave, and then we never see it again. So this was yet another episode this season in which basically the TARDIS got left behind somewhere, and they had to solve whatever their problems were before they could get back to it. But I really liked it. My new favorite, and the internet apparently, its new favorite villain is the Pating. I want one of those stuffed to sleep with at night because it's just so dang cute, even if deadly. But yeah, I loved it. I like the teamwork. We saw some more character development amongst the supporting cast. I loved the guest stars, those characters. I thought that there was a nice note of sort of tragedy and redemption in there that really appealed to me. So all in all, I really loved it.
I loved the Pating too. There was a lot of people that are obviously comparing it to Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, but that's a fair comparison. That creature was it's definitely being praised as being cute. And I agree about the supporting cast. I loved the interactions with the Jodie's doctor and the other doctor, where for once she wasn't in control and she hated giving that up. And it was interesting. I loved the development of her character. She wants to get her friends out of trouble. And this guy's like, I'm trying to help you. And it's kind of weird because it took me like 3 viewings to really see this point, but the guy he's basically echoing everything the doctor is always saying, except she was on the other end of it. So she was the one that needed to be saved. And she didn't like that. But at the same time, at a certain point, she relented. And she said, all right, I'm going to back off. And then
doctors make the worst patients.
That's a good point, son. I never thought about it that way. I actually got a little, by the way, the 2 actors have been romantic interests in a previous project they worked on. I don't remember what the name of the movie was, but yeah, they've been lovers on a show before, so I could see the chemistry there. So I thought for a minute there was going to be a little bit of a hint of a romance, but then he died. So
Yeah, oops, sorry for that.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so and the rest of the man, this was at first when I heard the descriptions when it first came out, everybody was going, "Oh, they had to hit a dud sometime," and this is the initial knee-jerk reactions. And they're like, you always have to have that like space station or spaceship in jeopardy with an alien running around thing episode, and I'm like, but in this case, it worked to, like you said, Carlos, develop the characters further. I loved the Graham is becoming, and I'll talk about that especially in the next one, the next installment. But Graham has become the heart of the TARDIS team. Now, that's what I think. And now, as far as not having the TARDIS be, here's what I found, in my opinion. I found that they did this on purpose for a reason. Is in this episode at least. The TARDIS, the fact that the Doctor was like, her whole reason for arguing with that guy was, I need to get back to it. I lost it. I'm not going to do that again. Scavengers can come grab the TARDIS. No, I need to get back to my ship. I need to get it. And she was going out of her way to like fight him, because the whole reason why is if the TARDIS had been on that ship, she wouldn't have argued with him. She was suffering from the fact that she had that separation anxiety, and she wasn't going to let that happen again if she could help it. And I felt like that's what was going on.
It sounds like you know from personal experience, George.
Hey, when I lost my TARDIS, but 100 years ago, it's a long story. But that's what I felt. I felt like that was what she was doing. She was like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And she was having some sort of PTSD from that. She's like, nope, sorry, I just got her back. Bring me back to that planet. What do you think?
I will say this. I have seen people on both the quote-unquote SJW side and the quote-unquote anti-SJW side both complain about the pregnant man for the exact same reason that he was.
I thought it was cute. I just thought it was cute. It's common to invert things in order to make a point, and the real point of it wasn't just to make a dude pregnant. It was for Ryan to look on his own father differently. Yeah. So it was a device, and to try to turn it into some bigger thing, I think does a disservice to the real story.
Well, they also inverted the trope. There's a trope when it comes to crisis movies where there's a woman that's going into labor, and this time it was a guy. I think that was just part of the goal when they did this.
I mean, let's be honest. The outrage that I've seen from both sides, because this has been over the exact same thing. It's like, you can't have a dude that's pregnant. It's like, this is thousands of years in the future where this subset of human being is completely different to what we have.
Yeah, guys have guys and girls have girls.
It's entirely possible that this guy can get pregnant, but what stuck out to me was both sides were arguing it's not right that this dude can get pregnant. And then the SJW kind of side with some of my more LGBT friendly friends has been, why the hell does he not have pain receptors? That's just wrong. And I'm like, what the fuck? Do you as a woman want to feel all that pain? No? Well, then why would you want to visit that upon a guy?
I cared about all the characters in this episode. I mean, that's what I liked. It's like, in a short 45-minute episode, I actually cared about, by the end, what was going to happen to all of them. That takes some good writing. I cared what was going to happen to the pilot with that syndrome and with the adrenaline syndrome from piloting, and her brother. I cared about them. I cared about the girl who was left in charge and how she was rising to the occasion. I cared about the guy even in the brief, 10, 15 minutes before he died. I mean, I actually liked him.
Chief medical officer.
Yeah, I mean, I actually ended up liking him before he died. That says some strong acting and writing and directing right there, because he was in it for the shortest amount of time in the whole episode, and I actually cared when he died. I was like, come on, don't go in there.
# robot lives matter.
Yeah, and Well, the android guy was pretty cool too. By the end,
yeah, Ronan seems to be the most underplayed actor this whole episode, and
Maybe
the problem
he'll
is he's the one that seemed like he should have had the most heart, considering he was doing everything that he was doing for the general.
By the way, there's a little Easter egg they throw into this episode. It's longtime classic Who fans like me will realize when they broke out the prepare for the Pating to come into the engineering room or the engine room. And by the way, that's a separate subject. By the way, so many geek friends of ours are going crazy about the detail and the passion that the Doctor went into about how the antimatter engine worked. Not just she made Scotty look like he was nothing. But that says a lot right there. But the weapons they broke out, they called them stasers. That is a Time Lord weapon that's been around since the late 70s, since the episode The Invasion of Time. And ever since then, the Time Lord soldiers always carry, they called them stasers. I think they just took the word phaser and inverted it. But the point is that's what they were always called, stasers. So when they said stasers, we have stasers, I was like, okay. I guess in the 65th century or 67th century, humans get them too. But that's a Time Lord weapon, at least by name. So that was a nice Easter egg. Engine, okay, when she goes into the hole, how the positrons, how the mini particle collider happens to make it happen. She goes into the detail. She gets so passionate about it. I was like, wow. What'd you guys think of that moment?
I mean, it's really
it was really good
technobabble.
I mean, delivered with
passion,
with feeling.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to run over you.
The only thing the only thing that I can honestly compare it to is when the old dudes retire from MIB and they just sit down on a bench somewhere and they look up at the sky and they go, "Do you see the stars? I hardly look at them anymore. They really are quite beautiful." It's like, yeah, the world around you is amazingly awesome, and your people are just so caught up in their lives they never notice how beautiful this thing is. And here's this several lifetimes old being going, just look at it. It's beautiful.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. I just find that her delivery of the way, and this is something I'll talk about later too. Jodie as a character, as her Doctor, as she's growing, for me, it's all the little things. Like she was in pain in this episode where she was recovering from an injury, but when she's herself, this Doctor gets excited by the littlest things. Now that is a Matt Smith thing, I've noticed. But the way she delivers it is where it's unique. And I love the little things that excite her, and the way she comes across when she delivers her lines. Because I think that, when they write a Doctor, sometimes when a Doctor first starts, from what I've heard and seen, they write them not knowing exactly who necessarily. When they write the season, they don't necessarily know who's the Doctor that's going to be the Doctor in that when they change guard. So they write for a generic Doctor, and then they have to make that their own. So and then once they get used to this new Doctor, they write for that Doctor. So that's why people will notice sometimes, for example, with Peter Capaldi, how he was one way and then he became a different Doctor. It's sometimes that they're not sure, they weren't even sure when they wrote. Sometimes they're grabbing scripts and they're bringing them into a different season, and they were originally written for, say, for example, David Tennant, but yet they grabbed a script from an unused script from Matt Smith's era, and they've done this to Star Trek too. Many times, especially during the TNG era. But they have to then kind of incorporate that into what's currently going on. And it doesn't always... I
think that's probably been the one thematic timeline between each and every new actor that's played the Doctor. When it comes to kind of reveling in the beauty of a thing, each Doctor has really shined as an actor at that point.
Yeah.
When we saw Capaldi do it, it was probably one of the when people saw Capaldi do it, they usually went, "That was a good episode." When we saw Matt Smith do it, we absolutely fell in love with him. When Eccleston did it, we adored it because it was funny and humorous. And when Matt Smith did it, we're like, "Oh, he's crazy, but he's lovable."
Yeah, and Jodie is coming across for me as she's excited by everything.
It's almost childlike. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
of all of the doctors, the one thing you could say about Jodie's doctor is that, yeah, sure, it's a woman doctor, but it seems like an entire rebirth of the doctor because she sees everything with this wonder that you've not seen from doctors before.
Carlos, what do you think about Jodie's growth up to this episode from the beginning? So this is episode 5. So in these 5 episodes, what have you noticed as far as her evolution?
Well, first thing I would say is she's definitely adorable. And when she's delightful, she's delightful. When she is inspiring, I think she's really great. I think whenever she sort of bucks up one of the other characters, we've seen her do it with Graham. We've seen her do it with Ryan. We've seen her, we saw her do it with the female doctor, the one who survived, in getting her to, to build her confidence. I think in those roles, she's been really great. Here's what's still lacking for me, and I'm hoping it gets there. There's a sense from, I think, the other incarnations of the Doctor of gravitas that I don't get from her yet. And even Matt Smith in his early episodes, they made him, silly and whatever, whimsical, also. But there were also things that he did that, you felt like this is a being who's been around for, potentially millions of years.
You're talking about like when they give their big speech moments?
Sometimes it's expressed in big speeches. Sometimes it's expressed in just sort of, very short but wide, short bursts of wisdom. There's lots of different ways to achieve that, but I haven't gotten that much from her. So I'm waiting to see more development in that part of who the Doctor is. It's not a criticism in the sense of I think it's bad because it's not there yet. It's more like room for improvement.
Okay, that's fair. And when we get to the Shadows of Punjab part, I'm going to bookmark this conversation because there's a moment she has on that spaceship with the aliens. But, I'll talk about that in a little while. What do you think about Jodie as far as how she is up to this point?
Well, at first I want to talk about the space axolotl.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
The thing is literally just a space axolotl.
It's a what?
I mean, the Patang is a space axolotl. Have you ever seen a picture of an axolotl, George?
I'm struggling to think of what you're talking about.
It is an aquatic creature. Oh. It is an aquatic creature that has these kind of frills on the side of its neck or back of its face.
Oh, all right. I didn't know what a tardigrade was either until Star Trek Discovery came out. So,
have you ever seen the Pokemon Mudkip?
No, I'm not a Pokemon fan.
Okay. No, that's fair. I'm just trying to think of other references where you might have possibly seen.
But now that you said that,
are you talking about the Mexican walking fish?
I think so.
It's basically like a salamander,
no.
And it's an amphibian, not really a fish, but. I'm looking at a picture of it right now. I Googled it while you were talking, and there's some of that, although, maybe there's, the same kind of cuteness to it, but probably it does look more like Stitch than an axolotl.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't know what a tardigrade was, and but tardigrades aren't cute. These things are. That's what Doctor Who.
Tardigrades are so cute. You take that back, George.
Sick bastard. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But
anything that you need like plus 10 times magnification to look at is not automatically cute. I'm sorry.
Well, I do appreciate the way that they made him be able to eat and ingest any. He reminded me of a combination of Bortus from Orville, which was more like Matt, and Carlos will get this joke, Matter Eater Lad from the Legion of Superheroes. Just being.
I love that the planet that he came from, Matter Eater Lad, was called Bismol.
Oh yeah, Pepto Bismol. I get you. Yeah, I never thought about that before. That's funny. Indigestion?
I mean, I will say this: it seems weird that just watching the episode back and forth, it seemed like everyone was like, "Well, it eats everything," and then it's like, "Well, no, it doesn't eat everything because why is it spitting stuff out?" And then to hear like the description of the thing, it's like every research to everyone that's gone to research the thing has wound up dead, and I'm like, okay, so Jodie's come to the conclusion that it eats energy, and they live in a pretty much all digital world at this point.
I like how we call it Jodie, and because if it was Matt Smith, it would be, or Peter Capaldi, we go. Peter says. You know what I mean? But no, it's fine. I get it. She is Jodie. She is the first female doctor, so I do it too. I just find it interesting that we all do that, and we don't go.
I mean, I prefer calling them by their actor because it's so much easier to distinguish than saying the doctor, because then it could be anybody.
Then shouldn't she be Whitaker? No, I'm joking. But I know what you're saying though. I actually do that too. I find myself saying that, especially online. But no, I hear you. The thing is that. When it comes to the thing you're talking about, the energy creature, whether he's going to the Patang, well, the one character, the captain, the pilot that was having the syndrome where her adrenaline was going to,
Pilot's heart.
Pilot's heart. She claimed that one of these things destroyed an entire fleet of hers during some war with a race called the Ionians, which in Doctor Who lore, I've looked. They've never been mentioned before, so that's new. And by the way, just so people know, Doctor Who lore, believe it or not, even though it's been 50 years, when it comes to the human future, has been incredibly detailed. They go through the entire history of how we went from an Earth Empire to a Federation, back to an Earth Empire, to the last great human Imperium, which is the one where we saw that guy who played Willow. In that one episode, Warwick B. Davis, where he played in that second...
where he was like the fighter pilot guy.
Where he wore the helmet, like in Time Bandits, which actually he was in. That's weird. I never thought about that until now. Anyways, he was in that Cyberman episode that Neil Gaiman wrote the second one.
Nightmare in Silver.
But just for a little bit of trivia, I got a little obsessed about 2 weeks ago, and as you do, about researching, because for my own show, about the future human empire. Doctor Who has been very consistent, and even when they do the modern Who, they actually have been consistent. In for example, the episode, Capaldi's second episode, which is Inside the Dalek, when that woman he rescues in that fighter, whatever she's in, when he materializes with the coffee he was bringing for Clara, and she was being chased by a Dalek. That group that she was part of, which is the Alliance or Coalition or whatever it was from, totally part of the consistency of the Doctor Who lore. Probably around the 40th century. There's a long history in Doctor Who, but the point is that Doctor Who's been very consistent. But when it comes to like this particular episode, which is the 67th century, and she's like, I got to visit the 67th century more often. I think it was the 67th. But the point is that she's like, we do this virtual piloting, and we do this, and we do that. That's new. So this is going to add to the lore, so that's cool. But the character, when she died, and the brother did that, did anybody find that odd that her brother could just jump on, he's never piloted before, and get them home? Or is that just...
It's because here's the thing. That whole thing was about subtext.
Was
that whole that whole thing was a brother sister rivalry. It was a sibling rivalry. They both trained to be pilots, and he failed. No, it's not explicitly said. It's subtext.
Oh, all right.
It is all subtext. They both trained to be pilots, and he failed the last tests, or whatever grand tests it was to become a pilot. But because he knew the equipment, that made him a great engineer for them.
I never caught
Yeah,
that part.
I got the sense that, and I think you're right. There definitely was this subtext of sibling rivalry between those two characters. But I also felt like they more explicitly pointed to the fact that he engineered a lot of those systems, and so he knew like what the controls do basically. And since they were relatively close to their destination, he only had to do it for a little while.
I finally saw the axolotl that Carlos PM'd into our chat, and yeah, I can see some of the facial features of that, but I don't think I think they were going more for Stitch. I really do.
No, I understand. I just looked at it because he had the little frills on his neck, and I'm going, oh, it's a space axolotl.
You do know they're definitely coming back, the Pating. I think. We'll see.
Probably in some way, just because they're so dang cute and people love them, so why not,
I mean, it's this series' adipose, right?
Yeah.
Actually, way better than that.
The other thing that the Pating reminded me of were those cute little aliens from Galaxy Quest. Yeah,
oh,
where
yeah.
they look
The
super
cannibal
cute
alien.
until all of a sudden they're like, really, with full of teeth and stuff. So that actually came right into my mind when I saw the Pating bare its teeth the first time in this episode. So there's a long tradition of, cute aliens actually being, ferocious kind of thing right. that we've seen, developing as a trope over the last, 10 15 years.
Yep, I agree. So I think we've exhausted talking about that episode a little bit, as far as I can think. But if anyone needs to revisit that, that's fine. But the follow-up episode, Shadows of the Punjab, how's it pronounced?
Demons of the Punjab.
Demons of the Punjab. Yes, that's the one. The one where we go to the 1947, and we learn about Yaz's grandmother's past, where they start the episode off where they're having a conversation, and she tells the doctor, she hands Yaz a watch, which has a crack in it, and says, this is important. And then she goes to say to the doctor, can we please go visit my gram back in the time of this watch? And the doctor says, oh, and then she puts the telepathic circuits to use, and they end up in a part of India that was on the border of Pakistan. And I was not, this is what I liked about this episode a lot. I was not aware of the movement that happened that caused this huge sort of civil war that caused 1 million people to die at least when they were separating Pakistan from India. Because of the Muslim and Hindu belief separation. Now here's what's interesting. When I worked at McDonald's a couple of years ago, I worked with a couple who came from India, but they were Muslim. And I had a long conversation with the guy in the relationship, and we were sitting down on a break one time, eating some French fries, and we got to this long conversation. He was talking about this, but I didn't quite connect it until I saw this episode, because he was talking about he was just talking about the history, and he must have come from that region or something, because, I mean, she didn't have to wear a certain haircut. I don't know the whole religious thing. All I'm saying is that when this episode happened, I was not aware of the events that went down in this historical event. And it was educational, and I thought it was a good opportunity to get to know Yaz a little bit more and flesh her out. But I was really... seriously, I did not know that this happened, but it was interesting to me. What did you think, son?
Well, see, the thing with this was because Britain was so heavily involved in what was going on at the time, I thought there would be a lot more of a historical exposition than what there was, because well, I mean, England would be a lot better off explaining this because it's part of their history than explaining the whole Emmett Till thing in Rosa because that wasn't their history, right?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but was it not because England was pulling out that the country and figure out what they want to do between themselves? And was that what was going on?
I
Yeah,
honestly,
that's basically what was going on. The partition of British India
The partition,
upon they basically ended up splitting up what was known as the Raj, the entire kind of British Indian Empire, into it became several countries, more than one. Obviously, the biggest one remained what we call India today, but it also was Bangladesh, Burma, Sri Lanka. So there were, and the thing about Pakistan is when the partition happened, we think of Pakistan as being in one place today, which it is, but in the partition, the reason the way that they figured out where the partition would happen was based on concentration of Muslims. So this area in the Punjab had a higher population of Muslims, and that's why they got that part. But the other part of the country of India, British India, that also had a bigger concentration of Muslims was known back then as East Pakistan, and they were on opposite sides of India. Same country, but on opposite sides, with India in between, a huge swath of India in between. East Pakistan ended up becoming, what was it? Bangladesh, I believe. Bangladesh. And because it just, I mean, if you
which
can
is
imagine
why you see
trying
the problems like you do in Burma right now with the because they're saying, well, they're coming from Bangladesh. It's like, okay, that doesn't justify genocide, though.
Well, and that's what I liked about this episode. Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, I didn't know about this as a historical. See, I've seen some of the, as you say, like the argument between people saying Doctor Who's too SJW, like because they want to give us a history lesson. How is that SJW? But anyways,
anything that makes white people uncomfortable is SJW. That's how you can basically.
It's not just that. I've seen people
agree with you on that.
Again, where I had both sides arguing the same point on the previous episode with the pregnant dude. They were on completely separate ends of the spectrum on this one, where you had your SJW type people were like, oh, this is all about being anti-fascist and against hate, and we gotta love each other, and da 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 da. And the people on the anti-SJW side is like, oh, here they go again. They're arguing about not being hateful or not being that, and I'm sitting here in the middle going, no, yeah, the argument that I'm seeing here, maybe because I'm just a freak, is literally, okay, you people on the SJW side can't hate the people on the anti-SJW side because look what will happen.
However, on the bright side, there's the doctor officiating a wedding, and I'll tell you what, that speech she gave about love, I mean, I don't want to sound like, I don't know, I don't know.
Holy crap, can I have that speech at my wedding?
No kidding.
It was a good speech.
It was a great speech. And that's one of the things I think that stands out about the growth and development I was talking about earlier of Jodie's character. The writers, I mean, now here's the thing. A lot of people don't know this, but after this episode, the writers for Doctor Who for all the episodes going forward are not Chris Chibnall. So this is going to be for the next, for the finishing stretch, we're going to get hopefully they've all had a meeting in the writings room, because it's going to be different it might make it seem a little different, because from this point forward, the writers are different. So we'll see what happens. But at this point, I feel like maybe Chibnall himself, at this point, if he wrote this in chronological order, of course we don't know that, it's like this sort of made this Doctor. If Matt Smith had delivered this speech and he had a flower in his hair, if David Tennant had done it. It's like that thing where the speech from that one episode where everybody's trying to get the other doctors at the conventions to do that speech, the Matt Smith speech from The Big Bang, or whatever it was, and and they had
from Stonehenge,
from the Stonehenge, and they had hey, Sylvester McCoy, you deliver it. Hey, Colin Baker, you do it. It's like, that's cute, but this is different. I would be curious what it would sound like coming from other doctors, but this is our first female doctor, and I keep saying, for some of my friends who are very pro-feminist, even male, I say, look, they say, oh, it shouldn't matter if she's a female doctor. In my opinion, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I do think you should embrace the fact it is a female doctor, because women are awesome, and you should make her say things different because she's a woman. Yes, you should. She's not an androgynous character. This character is a female doctor. There's nothing wrong with embracing her female side, and this speech to me was like the first real major bing, like that's the doctor that tells the difference between all of her prior incarnations, that she gave this speech in a way about love that if it had been delivered by a man, I'm sorry, it wouldn't have been the same. That's what's beautiful about being a woman, is that you are different from a man, and that's just the way it is. That's just nature. It's nothing bad. It's just
here come the people with the pitchforks and the torches.
Let them come. This is a negative thing. But Jodie is the first female doctor. And unlike Missy, where she's the first female master, this character is the opposite. She's like, Jodie, like, is embracing love in this speech. So going off of that, let's just, Carlos, what do you think about that moment?
Well, it was a lovely moment. Like I said, when she's when she's firing on all thrusters, when she goes into uplifting mode. I think that's one of the strengths that Jodie Whittaker brings to this version of the Doctor. So that was great. And and because it was really easy otherwise in this episode to lose track of the wedding that was a major plot point in it, because there was so much else going on in terms of the demons, and let's make sure we get to them at some point soon. And there's so much going on, the historical stuff, the writing, all of this, that it was really easy for a good chunk of this episode to lose sight of the fact that at its heart was this wedding, and in fact this this interracial or religious wedding that sort of symbolized the problem of or epitomized the problems that India / Pakistan were having around the partition. Quick aside, by the way, if you want to get a good overview of how and why this happened and just the tragedy of the partition, give the movie Gandhi a watch if you haven't watched it. Because one of the things that's really super tragic about the partition was 1 million people died, and most people in the West don't know about it.
Exactly. That's crazy that we don't know about that.
Well, I think that we probably know, the people who do know about it are the ones who saw it in Gandhi, which, at least thank God that that's there. But you really do get a sense from Gandhi of just how kind of senseless this violence was. And, and they even allude to it in this episode, where they talked about how, Muslims and Hindus had lived side by side in peace for decades and decades. And
then
someone
came in and told them that you had that the differences were irreconcilable.
Exactly. The same thing that we saw in the Balkans in the 90s, and we've seen over and over again.
It's like the miscegenation laws here in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's what we're seeing now, especially in the American South. So these are universal issues, and I think that was one of the things also that this episode was aiming to aim a spotlight upon. So sorry about that little tangent, but
that's okay.
I just thought it would be good to sort of place this in a larger context, and to place the wedding that was the whole reason for that speech within a broader context as well, because it really was a microcosm of this bigger problem, surrounding the partition of India and the bigger problem surrounding people who've been able to live in peace for so long, all of a sudden not being in peace. So
this episode definitely had a lot of heartstring tugging moments for sure.
Graham, especially.
That was definitely one. Basically, when he knew that the guy was going to die,
I love that moment. He is such a great character.
But the race of assassins who were turned witness to those not witness to death.
Yep,
because of the death of their own planet.
I was going to transition into talking about them, but son, if you're on it, so go.
But yeah, I mean that you also had the brother who, at every turn, rejected redemption as well. Like right after the wedding, they're in the house and she is offering him. She's literally praising him for keeping the land together, and she's offering him redemption in the form of, this piece of food, and he rejects it. And every other time that his brother is talking about this stuff, he rejects it, and he rejects it again and again. And that is tragic because it ultimately ends in his older brother's death. But I mean, God, that
basically hit at his hands, essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, that's the problem with these passionate. I'm not ragging on religion in general. I'm just saying historically. I mean, because I've, like I said, I had a conversation with the guy I worked with when I was working at McDonald's, and I only go back to that because he was so passionate as we talked about it. And I only connected the dots that he was talking about that with this moment. He taught because him and his wife and one of their daughters worked with me, and they love America because of all the freedoms they have. And I was confused because they're from India. I knew India had Muslims, and they had Hindu, and they had even Christian and Catholic. Everybody. I mean,
and India Sikhs. Don't forget the Sikhs.
And Sikhs, exactly. And that that really does confuse some people when they wear those turbans, and people think that you're Muslim. No, they're Sikhs. There's a huge difference if you're from India. But the thing is that people get confused about that. They kind of lump them all into one ball. And he was talking to me about it, and he told me that people don't get it, that they used to. He told me he was talking about how there used to be so much peace, and then things just went crazy a few decades before. And I'm like, I didn't understand. It was over my head. But now this episode has helped educate me a little bit more. And I knew generally about what happened with Gandhi and everything, but I never, and how the British Empire pulled out. I kind of knew about all that, but the larger education is there was more to it. That was the result of them doing that, which was that you then left these people to kind of decide, well, now what are we going to do?
Well, I mean, you have basically the same story in the Americas when the Spaniards invaded.
A little bit. I also want to mention that when Yaz's grandmother, sorry, I forgot. There was one moment that I absolutely loved. Remember that moment when the doctor was sitting in a little campfire circle with the other women? And you got to remember, this is the first time that the doctor is a woman, and they're talking woman to woman.
Oh yeah, and she talks about regeneration.
I love that moment because that was like she's suddenly realizing that, oh wait, it's a little different now, isn't it? And everybody else had no clue what she's talking about except maybe Yaz, but I don't even think Yaz quite understood what she's saying because she never quite explained it. I think she just sort of like okay, but I thought that was cute that Jodie was like, see, I'm doing it too, Jodie. She just kind of was embracing the fact that, oh, this is all new to me. I'm a woman now, aren't I? And the other women are just like, huh? I like that moment because I thought it was very telling of her trying to bond with these other women. At the same time, she's just new to this. I mean, what did you guys think of that moment? I thought that moment was kind of interesting as far as this doctor. I think people are undervaluing that one moment. But what do you guys think?
Well, it was definitely sort of a subtler,
Yeah.
piece of character development. But I think we've seen with other Doctors regenerations, there is a period in which they are essentially getting to know themselves,
Right.
and accepting the different circumstances in which they exist now, and the differences that they have in personality, even though they have shared memories. And even usually for the first several episodes, there's just issues of which memories are coming back, and which ones are present and which ones are still kind of re-knitting themselves in the Doctor's mind. So I think there's a number of moments like that throughout what we've seen of the season so far, that are remarkable. I mean, they're worth remarking upon. They're not huge moments, but if you look at them on a cumulative basis, you see some real depth there.
What do you think, son?
I honestly think that we need to see more of this race of assassin turned witnesses.
Yeah, we need to talk about them now. You just think
because I loved
they were
and
awesome.
hated the concept. Here's what I
right,
loved.
go ahead.
I love the idea of a race whose job it is simply to go around the universe, I guess, and bear witness to tragedies of individuals, people who die alone. I think that's really noble. What's sort of less explained and harder to understand is how do they go from assassins to bearers of
that was
witness.
Explained in the episode.
Yeah, they explained it, but I didn't really feel it. Like it was like a very sort of perfunctory kind of, we returned and now we're different.
No. I'm going to disagree with you there.
No, I mean, no, it was entirely explained, Carlos.
Yeah, it was.
They were off and away on assassin contracts.
Their whole planet got wiped out.
Came back to their entire planet being basically dust, which is the purple.
Sure. No, I'm not saying they didn't explain it. What I'm saying is I didn't feel it. I didn't feel how this transition. Why did they turn out this way as opposed to that way? Or they just sort of say, well, our planet was destroyed, so those of us who are left now do this. And that's okay, that tells me the facts of what happened, but it doesn't explain how you got there and why you chose this as your new life's work as opposed to what you were doing before. And I would have loved to have seen a little more of that than what we saw. It was basically just explained in exposition rather than they told, they didn't show.
Go ahead, son. I know you had something.
They did. They could have done more to explain it, but at the same time, they did. The whole thing was they were racked with such grief coming home to a planet gone.
Not just that.
Wasn't not just that the planet was gone, but that there was no one there to bear witness.
To bear witness or remember them. So it was like everything they were doing. That's what I got out of it too, by the way, is that when everything they were doing as assassins for whatever their purpose was meaningless. When if your homeworld can be wiped out while you're gone, it's like, what were we doing? What are we? So I can see that change in perspective. Now, on the other hand, there's something I was going to mention earlier. I want to say it before I forget. There's a moment that Jodie, this goes back to the detail of what Chris Chibnall has done for Doctor Who this season. It's the little details. When Jodie's talking to them the second time, when they explain everything to her, do you guys notice the hand things that she's doing? She's actually honoring them or respecting them.
I noticed that.
I thought that was extremely important to notice because this Doctor is like, she's not like David Tennant and all the others where she gets pissed off if a race has done something wrong and they have to ask the Doctor to forgive them. No, she's actually going, oh, maybe I was mistaken. I misunderstood you, so I'm going to offer you some sign of respect. And when she did the hand thing, like they were doing, I was really noticing that because it was like saying, I'm respecting your ways, and it's like bowing if someone bows. She was doing that little thing, but I thought that was an incredibly nice attention to detail. And I thought way she started out thinking that, she remembered the old ways that these guys were, and they were assassins, and she knew them from their reputation about being assassins and doing all that stuff. But then when they explained themselves, she started doing that hand gesture thing, and I thought that was a beautiful moment. I just thought it was good paying attention to detail.
Here's the thing though. By reputation, when did they stop becoming assassins and start becoming witnesses? Because if you think about it, they're being present for an assassination or being seen after an assassination, and them being present for the witness of someone who died alone could be conflated as the same event happening.
I still thought it was nice. I thought it was a good attempt.
I'm not saying it's not nice. I'm just saying that them being seen as assassins, like, for generations, when it could have been generations ago, that they actually became witnesses, but because they've been there when a person has died, has fueled that they're still assassins.
Oh yeah, I mean, we definitely saw that in this episode, with what the brother saw in World War II, and then the death of the Holy Man, and the appearance.
Did they ever explain the Holy Man's death in the purple?
Yeah, he was killed by the younger brother, because he didn't want him blessing the wedding.
Oh, okay. But the purple
stuff is the DNA, the life force of all of those lost both by the alien race and those who have died alone. It's a way of commemorating and remembering them by stealing a piece of who they are, or taking a piece genetically of who they are. That's why at the end of the episode you had all those heads in the hive room, because it was a DNA replication of that person.
Right. Again, they wanted you to assume that they were assassins, number one, and number two, that this purple thing was the instrument of death, when in fact it was, both things were inverted. They were there to bear witness, and the purple stuff was the way in which they were, recording that they were bearing witness. So it was explained.
So the grandmother, before we wrap up our opinion of this episode, we can't talk about this episode without going back to talking about the actresses who played the two versions of Graham. I'm not Graham. The grandmother, the older grandmother. I don't have the actresses' names in front of me, but the younger version versus the older version, and the whole flash forward, flashback, they did it. How do we feel about, are they the same person? Did they do a good job of juxtaposing their existence?
Well, they did a wonderful job in that.
I agree, but what do you think, Carlos?
Well, I mean, I think across the board, this show has done an excellent job in casting, and we saw it, in the Tsuranga Conundrum as well. I mean, I thought that the actress that they cast as a part of the pilot was phenomenal. You really get a sense of, again, gravitas from these characters, and so it totally worked for me.
And Son, what do you think?
The one thing I have on my mind is that I wonder if she knows. If the older grandmother knows at this point.
I think
I'm not saying
probably
that she would
subconsciously knows.
But
because
for Yaz to come back with those same wedding tattoos on her hand.
However,
but it's also 60 years later. So
well, she hasn't met the doctor.
I completely understand. No, I completely understand, but I wonder if something in her just kind of goes.
Well, I don't. Okay, I see what you're saying there, but what I do like about this episode, one of the other things, is that they didn't do that thing where the doctor, they explain, well, we know they're demons and they took care of them, but the doctor didn't the grandmother in her younger years did not, for example, enter the TARDIS. She didn't really get, and then in the future, she has, as far as we've seen, met the Doctor again to say, "Oh, it was you." I like that because it separated the events, like, so that she didn't go,
Oh, no,
I always knew,
I'm
what
not
was
saying
going to
that.
happen.
No, I'm not. I'm not making that much of a claim. What I'm saying is, okay, this memory that you won't talk about to Yaz is about your first husband who dies with a group of people, some of them British, some of them, I at this point I don't know what to classify Yaz as, but
But they all speak perfect Punjabi,
right? But then you have Yaz there during that wedding, and getting the same hand tattoos that she has 60 years later, and it just makes me go, I wonder if the grandmother I wonder if seeing the hand tattoos made the grandmother change her mind about telling the story about the watch to see how Yaz would react.
Oh, I would go that far. I would say that it may have triggered that in her, that's believable. Just not that she'd go, "Oh yeah, I met you 60 years ago."
A reminder, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, seeing it like that, I could see how that might trigger that kind of a memory. Sure.
I don't,
and have that kind of reaction. In which case, I mean, it explains why she would say now, "Yes, I'm willing to tell you." Yeah. Whereas, in her mind, or in her, timeline, the day before, she said, "No, I'm not going to share this with you."
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where 24 hours can make a world of difference with the right with the right trigger, with the right memory being triggered in a person.
And I want to change subjects a little bit before we so this episode was powerful. Both episodes were powerful. All of the episodes have been pretty good, except for the spider one, because I hate spiders. That's just if I was to look at the whole season so far, like the halfway mark, as far as a review, every episode was awesome except the spider one, because I hate spiders. That's just me.
I agree.
However, there was one thing that dropped a little bit earlier, and I shared it with both of you.
Okay. Before we get on to the
all right, yeah, go ahead.
Children Need thing. How amazing was that kind of Indian themed exit title for the Doctor? For Doctor Who.
I didn't notice that. What are you talking about?
You mean the music?
The ending credits music was literally Doctor Who theme in kind of an Indonesian Indian.
Really? I did not.
The person singing is literally going
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and revisit that because I never noticed that.
Yeah, there's a clip of it on the Doctor Who YouTube channel.
Wow, I never noticed that. I'm gonna have to go back and revisit that. That's cool. That gives me another reason to go look at the episode.
So I'd like to bring up a couple of topics before we move into where I know you want to take us next. Which you mentioned a few minutes ago, George, that we're sort of halfway through this season, and it's a good stopping point in looking at what's happened so far. And a couple of things that I've seen make the rounds in discussion online that I think are worth remarking upon. One is the villains that we've seen in this season, and whether they're the true villains of the season, or if they're basically devices to get us to look more broadly at what we're thinking.
But remember,
of as villains.
They did say they weren't supposed to be doing an arc in general.
Right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the strength of the villains as villains.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, we talked earlier, like when we were reviewing Rosa, about the villain in that one, the time traveling space white nationalist, and how he really wasn't very developed, and then the what were they called? Then in the first episode, the
Tooth Fairy people.
The Tooth Fairy
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I can't remember what they're called. Either.
yeah, same with them. It's like, they're gotten rid of, and it's no big deal. And I read one opinion piece that basically said that they were just essentially plot devices to get us to look at who the real villains are this season, and that they are us. They're that human beings are the ones who really are posing the greatest danger.
Which is
in
why
Rosa,
Salad Guy is the real villain, and thank God he's dead, right?
But like in Rosa, it wasn't really the white nationalist guy. It was the seemingly normal people that we saw. The bus driver and the seemingly regular people on the street who were offended by people of color being walking around like they were equals, that kind of thing. And and here where we saw Hindus and Muslims alike killing each other over. I'm not going to say nothing, but needlessly, I guess, needless violence, and that's maybe thematically what we're seeing play out more in this season as opposed to what we've seen in seasons prior.
Okay, I can back that up. Yeah, I agree with that.
This is why I say this particular episode with the demons was, to me, from my point of view, was more aiming towards the people on the left side of the political spectrum who say, no, we are different. These people need safe spaces, and these people need this, and we need to exclude those people. And I'm like, do you hear yourself? That is so segregationist. That is literally what divides us, and you're complaining that the other side is what you're doing. Here's a perfect example of that coming to a head. We can't do this.
But Doctor Who has never. People who say Doctor Who's never been political are actually wrong. They've always been political. People just have chosen not to listen.
I mean,
they only notice the politics when it's a woman.
Yeah,
they only notice the politics when it's against their belief.
You know what? That's actually pretty fair. Doctor Who has always. They've even used pop culture back in the William Hartnell days. I remember when the Christopher Eccleston episode. I can't remember which one it was, but he was on a space station and they played a Britney Spears song, "Toxic," I think it was, and people were like, "Oh, they're using pop music from them, and that's bad." And this was season, the new Who season 1, and I remember going, "Did you guys not watch?" Of course you didn't, because you're all new. That's the whole point. But William Hartnell had a whole episode where they watched the Beatles play their song on the TARDIS scanner back in the 60s. And he went, "Oh, it's these newfangled Beatles." And he hits the button. And they're like watching the Beatles song on the TARDIS scanner. They've always done this. Now, they didn't maybe do it in the 70s, sure, but it's not new to Doctor Who. There's a precedent, and that started with the very first era under William Hartnell, the first Doctor. So what I'm trying to say is that when people say, Doctor Who's never been political, Doctor Who's never done this, Doctor Who's never done that, you guys need to pay attention.
It's just people making excuses for why the current argument is against their belief. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, how many people do you think exist? I'm going to take this off on a little bit of a tangent, but like, how many stories do you not hear about of people who hated the beginning of Star Trek because there was a black person on the set, or this Asian person on the set, or a Russian on the set during all of these really racist times in the United States? And even though the TV show explained away that, oh, we've all gotten past that, how many people do you think hated Star Trek because of those things?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Doctor Who never had a black companion until New Who with Mickey. He was the first. That's interesting. As you were saying that, I'm thinking back and I'm like, classic Who. Okay, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, Tom Baker. Nope. They did have a skimpy dressed leotard women who threw a dagger and killed people, but no black people. Nope. That did not happen until did not happen until New Who with Mickey. That was it. That was the first time. So just saying. So anyways, yeah, so Doctor Who has never been political stuff and anything controversial. Doctor Who has made up for it, obviously, because they cast a female doctor, and they made the master. Yeah. They made a master a female. Doctor Who has been around longer, a little bit longer, not much longer than Star Trek.
But here's the thing, and this is what what pisses me off is there's this notion that because they're doing this, that it's to satisfy some agenda, when in fact it's all about it's about changing things up. I mean, when you're a creator, you look for things that you can do differently in order to shine a different light, explore something new, because then otherwise it gets boring. And so these are common ways you invert things. I had a friend, I think it's an old rabbi's expression that said, if you want to see if something is true, kick it. And that's what's going on here. They're sort of kicking the conventional wisdom around Doctor Who and seeing what truths it reveals. And so, the result of the kicks here have been, a female master and now a female doctor, and companions who are people of color, and all those things are great. We've had LGBT companions so far as well. So, yeah. I mean, these are all things that they're not about. I mean, to be so reductionist as to term this, an SJW agenda is ridiculous because it's just simple drama. It's like you don't want to cover the same stuff over and over again when you have these big opportunities right in front of you around changing demographics and, looking at the world in new ways through the eyes of people whom we haven't seen it through before. These are natural, sort of dramatic and creative choices people are going to make no matter what, the political agenda is you're trying to project onto this.
This is the same reason I have arguments that the arguments that I do with the people who describe themselves as anti-SJW. It's like, okay, you say it's the story that matters, then why are you pissed off at the color of the person being cast? Because it's not true to the story? No, the story is still the story. You haven't seen what the story is with the actors in place. You're complaining because your imagination of who the characters are is different.
Yeah, and Doctor Who has definitely not. I mean, ever since Russell T Davies took over, I mean, obviously he was a gay person who is, well, he's still a gay person, I'm sure. But he was the one that brought Doctor Who back, and people can say the gay agenda, because that's what they kept saying. It was the gay agenda. There was a rumor around there that's turned out not to be true, that Christopher Eccleston left because he was Christian and that he was tired of Russell T Davies pushing a gay agenda. And I don't agree. He has clarified that wasn't why. But
well, that's what he says.
Well, that's what he says. That's true.
I mean, we only have his word to take for it.
Yeah, that's true.
And it doesn't explain some of the comments that he's made over the years either.
Yeah,
but look, I'm not looking to take Christopher Eccleston to task over this. It's just like what's happened. It's water under the bridge. He has his opinions. That's fine. I don't think we need to make it.
We won't
a bigger deal than it is. It's
right.
It's from my perspective, and I've written about this. I wrote a blog about it years ago. It happened. It's something worth, remarking upon, thinking about. How does it change the way we look at our favorite TV shows? All those things they're good things for us to do. And if this sparked that, then I think it's been a worthwhile examination.
Yep.
It all boils down to if your whole point is it's about the story, then let the story happen. Don't argue with the story because you don't like the actor that they cast.
Well, not only that,
don't be stupid. Look, we can, we've all agreed at some level that the Last Jedi was terrible, but it was terrible because the story was terrible, not because any individual race of actor was that individual race.
Well, not only that, but I mean, if his agenda, okay, he created Jack, sure, he's omnisexual and all these other things. I'm only going to go into this for a tiny bit, and then we're going to move on. But he could have made the Doctor. He had the power to make the Doctor himself be, get into a gay relationship. But he made him fall in love with Rose. He's just because the creator, the producer is the showrunner, I should say, is one sexuality doesn't mean that they're going to push their agenda on the narrative of the story. He was a gay man, and his biggest thing was his love story was a Rose and the Doctor, and that was he loved that. That was his big agenda. He talked about that. He actually said that it was based on Buffy and Spike, and that was his thing. He didn't care about the gender. It was about Buffy and Spike being recreated as the Doctor and Rose. And there are so many parallels if you guys go back and research it. There's a moment in Doomsday when Rose was cut off from the universe, when she hugs herself against a wall and she's crying, and the Doctor does the same thing on the other Earth. Okay? If you watch an episode of Buffy, they do the same thing with Buffy and Spike in a tomb that was written. And Russell T Davies always said he based everything and was inspired by Buffy in his run of Doctor Who.
I want to go back for just a second.
Go ahead.
I want to clear things up. Jack is a trisexual because he'll try any kind of sex.
Okay, that's fair.
Grown.
So one last thing, so we can. I want to get this topic out there before we go.
Wait. No, before you
ahead.
do that, because this is still kind of. I promised there were two things I want to talk about. So
all right, well, go ahead.
The second thing was Doctor Who's ratings.
Oh,
if you, I was taking a tour through different comment sections out on the interwebs, and the people, of course, who are offended by the Doctor being a woman and so forth, and the SJW agenda and whatever, all are pointing to declining ratings, and this is proof it didn't work, and blah blah blah. So I thought I'd actually take a look at what the ratings are like this year versus previous season, and they're basically wrong, but it's not. But it is a little complicated. What we did have is we had a first episode that had the highest ratings that we've probably seen in a decade for Doctor Who, and the ratings have in fact steadily declined since then. But that's normal
Just to be
for
expected.
TV series. Number one, and number two, while they have gone down, they're still higher than they were in season 10. The average amount, in the 18 to 49 demographic, they're still doing very well. And the total number of viewers, it's gone down from 10 million to, I think, just below 8 million, in the UK, and in the US, there's been a similar decline, but there's still just under 1 million viewers in the US on BBC America. So yes, we're seeing what I would call a natural decline that you see in even hit TV shows, but you're still seeing an above average rating for people who are watching. Overall, there's more people watching this season than there were in the season before, and probably several seasons before that too. So that's good news, I think. That contradicts what a lot of people are the way in which a lot of people are trying to portray a female Doctor and the kinds of stories that have been told this season as a failure. I don't think that's true.
So they're technically correct, but they're contextually incorrect.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. No, I do agree with you. I did watch a lot of different shows that talked about the ratings, and here's the thing. I used to do customer service, and in customer service, there was an old rule of thumb. Whenever people have tons of complaints, for every, say 20 customers, you're going to get like 10 of them that say something good. You're going to get mostly if they call on you, in customer service, they're going to say, I'm bitching. I have a problem. Okay? And for every 50 people that are satisfied, you'll be hear from maybe 5 people who go out of their way to say, I love your service. I love this. I love that. Because people have a harder time going out of the way to say something nice than they do complaining. And unfortunately, that's the way it works in everything. So when I look at these things, it's like, some people are complaining. So when people are reporting this information, they want to report, oh, Doctor Who's on the negative. Doctor Who's on the downfall.
This goes back to a quote from Futurama. Honestly, the binary god that Bender meets. When you do things right, nobody will be sure you've done anything at all. Yeah, that's modern business. When you drink a Coca-Cola, okay, you drank a Coca-Cola. You don't cheer for it because it's a Coca-Cola. You're satisfied with the product. But if it's bad, oh boy, are you going to let people know that it was bad?
20 people are going to, 20 people are going to let you know that they hate you before one person might speak up and say, what are you guys talking about? I'm happy for the same thing. And, they're going to look at ratings. And I'll be honest with you, when it comes to the BBC,
George,
I'm just saying that, like, when people are talking about that, they are going to complain first, and they're going to praise way later if they need to. But they're not going to go out of their way to see something nice. When Jodie first came out, her first episode, everybody went, oh, it's just sensational. Like, millions of people watched it. And everybody was like, yay! Because people were paying attention to it. But now what people are paying attention to is, has she gone down? They're not paying attention to, has she stayed up? They're looking at it from a totally different lens. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, again, it comes from the human nature side of human nature is basically, if it works, okay, cool. If it's not working, what the hell? What's wrong with it? Let me complain to like 50,000 other people that it's not working. That's just basic human nature. And what you're talking about isn't so much the same people now trying to find a negative. It's the people who were positive, had a much larger voice at the beginning praising this than you have because of just the normal fall off of it not being in the news. So you have that boisterous minority who hates the thing just because it's a thing that they can hate, now screaming at the top of their lungs and finally being heard. Oh, it's shit, it's crap, look, see, the ratings are going down, it's shit, this is why this shit never works.
Yep, I agree. So I want to talk about one unless you, Carlos, come up with something new. We watched a sort of a Children in Need special that was dropped earlier by the BBC. And it was a sort of a lead-in to the new episode of Doctor Who. But this was unlike... Okay, so when it comes to Children in Need specials, we're not going to see this repeated in the actual episode. This is going to be a standalone thing. If you don't watch it, you're going to go in blind. Well, not blind. You're going to watch the new episode.
To me, this is going to be like the Titanic episode from...
Well, they do that, but they've been doing that for like...
yeah. Well, yeah, but you never see
15 years, 20 years.
Yeah, but you never see the full entirety of the Children in Need special in the episode. You just see bits and pieces that have probably been edited together.
You don't lose anything if you don't see this, but you gain something if you do, in my opinion.
Okay, so my question is, who is this old friend we're supposed to meet? Because I'm lost. They were just meeting an HR person.
The Fez,
But the Fez is not a person, is it?
It's a friend. It's a friendly Fez. It's a friends.
Okay.
Okay. Don't you know Fezzes are cool? Fezzes are cool, son.
I understand the Fez thing, but the way that this was titled by the BBC was that we were supposed to be like meeting someone, not a thing.
Oh,
I think we just have
Old
different
friend.
priorities around
No.
fezzes.
It said old friend. An old friend is an old fez, I guess.
How can it be an old fez if it was newly ordered from Kablam?
It wasn't. Well, who?
It was ordered a while ago. Remember? They just
Yeah,
caught up with
Yeah,
it.
and just newly arrived.
But that's it's like she said, time and space kind of thing. You don't know when shit's gonna happen.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yep.
Again, just the title of it led me to believe that we were seeing a person, not a thing.
No, I mean I can
no.
see how you'd assume that. I just as soon as I saw the fez, I was like,
the lady
the
behind
fez.
the HR counter is like, has it somebody? That's another thing I want to bring up from the last 2 episodes. I'm sorry to like do all that again, but like the general from the demons. Have we not seen her in Who before? I swear I've seen her in Who before.
General.
Yeah,
you mean from Tsuranga?
Tsuranga, yeah, from the general lady from Tsuranga.
Oh, that's one episode before. Okay,
maybe she did seem familiar to me, but I wasn't sure. There've been so
who
many.
Who is that lady? Why have I seen her before? And she's come from Who.
They actually have been recycling a lot of actresses and actors from previous episodes. So I don't know. You could be right. I don't know.
And maybe I'm just crazy, but seeing a lot more Pakistani-ish representation in Doctor Who seems like a great thing to me.
That's definitely true. I think the reason you're seeing more Muslims and Indians in general is because that also reflects demographic trends in the UK and the US too, but much more so in the UK. And it's being more inclusive because if you want to grow an audience, you have to have people that your audience can relate to, and that's one way to do it.
Yeah, that's.
I learned from Mrs. Doubtfire, and I don't know how true this is, but the largest minority in the UK is Pakistani.
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
But anyways. No, the only reason I hated that movie...
I love there was that drive-by fruiting!
The only reason I hated that movie was the whole fake teeth thing. I was like, oh, that grossed me out. The way he spit them. Anyways. It's a long
That's
story.
what grossed you out?
I was a kid. I was way younger when I watched that movie. It wasn't anything against a guy dressing as a girl. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was the teeth. I'm sorry. For me, it was a pet peeve. I was like,
false teeth can be intimidating.
And that was the only thing. It had nothing to do with the what people would assume. Anyways, yeah.
Hey, at least you don't. Hey, if you lose your teeth, at least you don't go into dentured servitude, right?
False laugh.
I'm waiting for Carlos to go. Oh God.
I said it inside where it counts.
He internalized it. All right. So
he said in the back of his throat.
So as far as since we did 2 episodes in one, let me ask you guys this before we go. I'm going to ask Carlos first. On a rating of 1 to 10, as far as Doctor Who this season, let's say the halfway mark, what would you rate where we are right now, Carlos?
I would say we're at 7.5, something like that. Generally good. Some stuff needs to be developed more. And I think, I'm still reserving judgment on this, but I feel like the decision to not have any kind of overarching storyline makes it feel not as profound to me. Just the episodic nature of it. I mean, I've always felt that that's one of the coolest things about Doctor Who, at least since the reboot, was how they tease different ongoing storylines, and I think you can still be episodic. And in fact, I think in large measure, Doctor Who since the reboot was that way. You had little tidbits about the overarching story that would be thrown at you in each episode, and it wasn't till close to the end of the season that it would sort of come into its own. But I feel like the strictly episodic nature this season is probably not serving it as well as I think it could. But, as I said, I'm reserving judgment on that. But that's why it's as low as it is at 7.5 for me.
I don't think 7's low. I think anything that's 5 or lower is low. But that's cool. What do you think, son?
It sits at a solid 8 for me. It's not really nearly as perfect as it could be.
I'm actually surprised that you said that, because I feel as though you had the more complaints than anybody. No offense.
Having complaints about nitpicks is not disliking the story. See,
that's true. That's true.
My biggest complaints are at the end of the day are really nitpicks. It's like, oh, you're not explaining this little bit of history, or you're not really explaining what is going on here. You're setting a story outside of it, but using it as an inclusion tool, or all the little hints that we've gotten of there being something bigger, like you said the last time with the Forever Child or whatever, or in the Tsuranga Conundrum, where we have the Doctor like scanning Jodie and going, well, that's concerning, and then nothing else is mentioned of it ever again.
I think I would have to agree with you. I'm going to give it, and I'm going to be conservative when I say this. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to be liberal. Fuck it. I'm going to say... I'm going to say 8.5, and I'm going to say why.
That is liberal.
I'm going to say because here's the thing. I know that Chris Chibnall wrote the first 6 episodes, and now we are about to go free fall. And
I think you're making a bigger deal of that than it needs to be. He is still the showrunner. The showrunner... The showrunner has a lot to say. It's just he's not the one doing the physical, typing away on the keyboard.
You also have to remember, this is not Stephen Moffat.
That's why I'm giving it an 8.5.
I like Stephen Moffat, so yeah.
That's my problem with the Stephen Moffat run.
I liked him until
Moffat's stories were okay. And then when all the other, when other writers were writing the stories, they just seemed naturally better than Moffat's story.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say this. Moffat was awesome when he wasn't writing arcs. His individual stories were amazing. Let's look at, for example, The Girl in the Fireplace. Well, The Girl in the Fireplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's considered one of the best ones.
The Empty Child. I'm sorry. When you don't have Stephen in charge of a plot, which goes, by the way, it was the robot that was the Doctor. I'm sorry. That was really what River shot. I'm sorry. That's where I go. Moffat said, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Anyways, the point is, the reason I'm giving it an 8 point is because I see the potential. I'm being optimistic. I'm saying if Chibnall can get us to here, okay, and he has and then he said, "Hey, you rusty writers, for the rest of the season, I like you. I have faith that if he can say, whew, I'm out of steam. I need you guys to just take it from here, take the ball, and go." I'm
sorry, George. That's some creepy self-assurance or other person Hey, I like you. What the hell?
The thing is, it's not like these people weren't around and he's handing this off to them. They've been around.
Exactly.
There is a writer's room. I mean,
they're not like random people that he said, "Hey, by the way, do you think you have a good story?" And they're all smoking pot and going, "Hey, dude, do you think you can write an episode?" "Oh yeah, dude. I got this."
Moffat has explained this in the writer's room countless times.
There's a Dalek and they're like floating, and we can't write that episode.
Okay, George, we get it.
Anyways, you get what I'm saying.
But see, Moffat has explained this like countless times in interviews. The writer's room is not as much of a, oh, you're a writer that's not the main writer, you can go off and do your own thing. No, the lead writer, Chris Chibnall, in this will have a string. Even if it's not an arc, he will have a string to string through all of these episodes written by other people to say, that's a point I want you to make, and that's a point I want you to make in your episode, and oh, you over there? Yeah, you get that little piece of tech right there. Because that's
let me make one thing straight. what Carlos brought up long earlier was that he talked about the Jody hasn't hit the he didn't say this verbatim, but the Matt Smith moment where he did the Stonehenge, as we've all talked about, where the David Tennant speech at the end of time. We need to give Jody room to give her speech, to get her doctor on, so we say.
Was that not the wedding speech? I'll be honest, because that's what I got from that.
Really? The Amy Rory wedding speech was your thing?
No.
She's talking
her
about
wedding speech from Damon.
Oh! That was the start.
That was literally her gravitas moment, because that was literally her saying
it's her first season though.
In the galaxy. Well, her first season. Matt Smith, his first episode, did a whole huge speech about the Patient Zero and protecting Earth.
That was a great speech.
You guys have low standards. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. It was a great speech.
But that
says the guy who gave it 8.5.
I mean, that literally felt like her gravitas moment where she knew what was going on. Look, and she made it known that she had all this information. And the biggest thing to her as the doctor was hope and love.
We have several more episodes to go. I don't know exactly how many there are. I think there's 10. Oh, yeah, there's 10. And then there's a New Year special that they just announced. Because they're not gonna do a Christmas special. However, they're gonna do a New Year special. So whatever. There's 11 episodes. So we're on episode 7 next. I think it's
I believe so. Yep. Blame.
So
I'll be honest. Every time I hear that, I think of the '90s variety show from Nickelodeon.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Kablam!
Oh, yeah. The Fez thing was awesome. Anyways, so, yeah, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen for the rest of the season. And I think that, I have no complaints. I think that I kind of agree with you guys that they could have benefited. I think you're saying this. They could have benefited from a arc. But I think we're used to that we're spoiled by that because you have to remember something, and I mentioned this earlier. Russell T Davies has mentioned on record he did base his entire recreation of Doctor Who on Buffy. I know you guys, you have to look it up if you don't believe me. He did. He loved the whole seasonal villain. He loved the whole big bad thing at the end. And he did. He said time and time again.
Yes,
Buffy.
You've told us this already.
Yes, I have.
A lot.
I know.
We get it.
All right. So my is this approach that they're taking now, where they don't have an arc, the anti-Russell T Davies, is it working? Well, the numbers are where you have to kind of fluctuate, like you guys have pointed out, up and down, up and down. So we'll have to see. There's still half a season to go. We will revisit this, won't we?
Oh, we have to.
Oh, yeah. On an episode by episode basis,
or Hopefully. 2 episode by episode basis. All right. Well, guess what, guys? We're going to talk about the next episode when we do. So, Carlos, where can people find you on social media?
I am at C Pedraza on Twitter, and also sorry about that, and also at Aximonitor. Yeah, it was a bowl. Also at Aximonitor on Twitter, and then of course on the Aximonitor Facebook group.
All right, and Son, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/SunsealFan. That's generally where I post the stuff that I've been in.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody, for this double Entrenade episode of Doctor Who. Well, sort of Super Geeks Reaction Who. And we will talk about...
Wait, what was that word that you said?
Oh, come on. I said Entrenade. I meant entendre, or whatever the French word is.
Entendre.
Entendre.
Okay, because I had no clue. I honestly had no clue what you said.
I couldn't...
Basically, that this was a twofer.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. That was what it... Carlos is my wingman. Anyways.
Are you sure he's not your Frenchman?
Oh, man. All right.
That's racist!
All right. Anyways, you guys, so thank you for joining us, and we will join you. Well, we will talk about this episode or some other episode next time.